Some things changing, aren't they? You notice this? Every time someone goes off and wins a national championship, the tune totally changes. Well, first I want to talk about this with Georgia. Georgia football, things changing a lot, like the seasons. The sun's all of a sudden come up and everyone's shining on Georgia now. The NFL Combine's been happening in Indianapolis, which is a town that has been historically good to Georgia over the past 3 or 4 months. And shockingly, now I know you need to brace yourself for this, but one of the most historic defenses in the history of college football actually had some very good players on that defense. And if you were watching the NFL Combine, you saw Jordan Davis, for example, which is, it's more alien than human. 6'6", 341, turned in a 4.78 40. A lot of you think you could do that. A lot of you are listening to me right now, and you may be in high school, you may be in college, you may be just out of college, you're 25 years old, you work at an accounting firm, but you played high school ball and you're 6'1", you're 185, you work out 3 or 4 days a week, you're in good shape, you think you could do that. No, you can't. You can't run a sub 4.8 40. You can't. I'm just telling you, you can't. I don't want to ruin it for you. Also, Devontae Wyatt, not to be outdone, he turns in a 4.77 40. He checks in at 6'3", 304. So again, should be illegal, but it turns out they're going to allow that in the NFL. Turns out Georgia was playing that all year long. They had those kinds of guys. Channing Tindall had good numbers. Nakobe Dean's a freak. We didn't need to see him in Indianapolis. They had all kind of guys turning in incredible numbers. So 14 kids Georgia sends to the NFL Combine, which was a record, producer Jesse tells me, for this year. I don't really keep up with such things. I think Oklahoma was second with 11. So that's good. Hats off. Good for Kirby Smart for finally arriving at Georgia. I, of course, say that sarcastically because I don't believe that. But when you have a good combine and then you win a national championship a few months earlier than that, all of a sudden I get to listen to folks talk about how Georgia football is elite, and I get to talk about how Kirby Smart's a genius now, and I want to fill you in on something tonight that I don't think a lot of other programs are, but I just want to let you know something. I don't really think anything's changed about Georgia football over the past 4 months. I think they are who we thought they were. Maybe not a lot of folks, but we always thought they were. And I'm going to kind of talk in a couple of minutes about how some folks delayed reality for a solid 4 years when it comes to Kirby Smart and when it comes to Georgia. But all of a sudden, even though nothing's really changed, everybody thinks a lot's changed about Georgia. And you know what we call this? What we call this in college football is a classic she's all that scenario. And for those of you unfamiliar with the classic late 90s high school dramedy film, allow me to fill you in. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Here we have Lainey Boggs, played by Rachel Lee Cook. She's got glasses on, she got overalls on, which is supposed to make me and Zach Seiler and everybody else at the high school there think that she's a monster. She's hideous. Why? Because, glasses glasses and oof, she's wearing glasses. That's the before Rachel Lee Cook. Then all of a sudden, she pulls her glasses off, changes clothes, and she's a dime. She was already a dime, is the point. And so I want you to take a look at the before and the after. These are the same people. One of them has meatballs on her head. The other one's ready to go to prom. These are the same people. She already looked good. She didn't need to take the glasses off to look good. Georgia football was already an elite program. Kirby Smart in Georgia, they are Rachel Lee Cook. It's a classic she's all that scenario. They already were the hot girl in the room. It's just that now they've got a trophy to put in their trophy case, and we get to update Kirby Smart's Wikipedia page, and all of a sudden everyone that was floating around those edits saying he's no different than Mark Richt. Boy, those disappeared with Christmas lights around January 14th, didn't they? All of a sudden now, those same folks are trying to tell you Kirby Smart's arrived. Georgia's arrived. They haven't arrived. They did something they hadn't done. They achieved something they hadn't achieved. They've been operating at this level for a while. I think this is why people lose a lot of money gambling on football. It's why even up to and including at the administrative level in college and the general manager level in pro sports, people get fired constantly. You have coaching turnover and staff turnover constantly. Folks don't know how to interpret result. Result is just that. It's stuff that we can put on these fancy graphics if you're watching on YouTube, and it's stuff that, like I said, it goes on the Wikipedia page. Kirby Smart didn't change who he was internally as a coach over the span of 4 quarters in Indianapolis in January. Nor did Georgia football all of a sudden elevate themselves as a caliber of program because you saw a couple of 300-plus pounders run sub 4.85 40s. Nothing changed. This is a product. It's kind of like an assembly line. You know, you don't learn about the machine once the assembly line pushes something off of the conveyor belt. It has to exist as it is in order to produce the product that gets pumped off the conveyor belt. One doesn't come before the other. It's kind of the other way around. But a lot of folks don't believe that you are a certain caliber of coach until you have achieved this win plateau or that win plateau, or in Kirby Smart's case, you're going to be relegated. I never viewed this as a slight, but a lot of people said you're going to be relegated to being no better than Mark Richt until you do what? Until you beat the greatest of all time? Like what an indictment. Kirby Smart, a few years into his head coaching career, dude's in his mid-40s, can't beat the best of all time. Well, then all of a sudden he did that. Here's the reality. Some of you out there delayed accepting reality about Kirby Smart in Georgia for about 4 years. Because the reality is there's nothing all that different about what they just did in January and 2017. The outcome of the game was different, but the level that they were flying at, the caliber of coach Kirby Smart there's nothing really different about him. I think he'd be the first to sit down and tell you that. Certainly there are things he's learned since then. Certainly there are probably tweaks he's made here and there in the program. They were operating at a really high level in 2017. He took Alabama without his best receiver, by the way, Javon Wims. He took them to overtime in a national championship game. And that ball is shaped in a funny manner. And that ball bounces in a funny manner. And the inches that make up the differences in wins and losses went Alabama's way that night. Didn't mean Kirby Smart was a different coach, but the reality, I think a lot of us know this, is if Devontae Smith drops that touchdown pass, or if Tua doesn't get the throw off, if Georgia ends up winning, 23-20 in overtime there, Kirby's the same guy, but he would have been crowned 4 years ago. And the reality is, he was the same dude then he is now. And there was no magic elixir. I mean, this was not some invincible team in their own right. They got smoked by the same team they beat in the title game a month earlier in Atlanta. But all of a sudden now, because that scoreboard read the right way in January, all of a sudden now, Kirby Smart's arrived. That dude's elite. He's the cream of the crop. Georgia, here's the one thing that changes. Georgia, even though I thought they already were, now everybody thinks that Georgia's the hot girl at the party. And the harsh reality is we never got a She's All That Too. So I did not get to see how Rachel Lee Cook handled that. Did it go to her head? Did she become words we can't say on air? Or did she stay humble? Did she stick to the process? Did she throw the overalls right back on after prom, go back down in her dad's basement, and just keep painting? We don't know. Hollywood never gave us that. But we do get to see how Kirby Smart in Georgia will handle this alleged newfound success and newfound shine on this program. Hey, it's good for recruiting. Not that they needed it. It is good for recruiting. Looks great in the trophy case. This is a results-oriented business. I get that. I'm certainly not discounting winning a national championship. That's what we play the game for. I mean, that's what you compete at the highest level for. You ultimately want to reach a goal collectively as a team. And for Georgia, it ended in a national championship. I'm not arguing that that's insignificant. I'm arguing it didn't change who Kirby Smart is. It just may change the way that you introduce him at a public speaking engagement. Really, I just wanted to talk about Rachel Lee Cook, and we found an excellent way to do it. So if nothing else, Kirby Smart, I appreciate you for that, my friend.